Montauk Lighthouse, a beacon of history, tragedy, and haunting legends. The Montauk Lighthouse, perched dramatically at the easternmost tip of Long Island, stands not only as the oldest lighthouse in New York State, but also as a timeless symbol of maritime heritage. For over 2 centuries, this stoic sentinel has weathered brutal storms, guided imperiled ships, and witnessed countless lives saved and lost within its gaze. But beyond its historical and navigational legacy, Montauk Point carries with it darker tales of mysterious deaths, ghostly figures, and whispers carried on the wind. The idea for a lighthouse at Montauk Point was first proposed in the 18th century, long before the American Revolution. The eastern tip of Long Island was notoriously treacherous, with rocky shores and powerful tides that had claimed many ships. As trade grew between New England, New York, and the southern colonies, the necessity for a navigational aid became urgent. In 1792, President George Washington personally authorized the construction of the Montauk Point Lighthouse. It was among the first public works of the new United States government and signaled the nation's commitment to safe commerce and maritime infrastructure. Construction began in June 1796 and was completed in just 5 months, with the light first lit on November 5th of that same year. The lighthouse was built by John McComb, a prominent New York architect also responsible for other iconic early American structures. The original tower stood 80 feet tall and was constructed of sandstone blocks from Connecticut. At the time, the light was fueled by whale oil, with reflectors used to amplify the weak flames. Montauk Lighthouse was not only functional, but deeply symbolic, one of the earliest manifestations of a national maritime strategy and a testament to the growing identity of the United States as a seafaring power. In its early decades, Montauk saw heavy traffic from merchant ships, fishing vessels, and whalers. The lighthouse became a critical feature of nautical charts, guiding ships around the tip of Long Island and into New York Harbor. As the 1800s progressed, Montauk grew in importance, but the isolation of the point made it a difficult and lonely post. Lighthouse keepers were often cut off from civilization during winter months, and storms would batter the structure relentlessly. Several tragic stories of isolation, illness, and injury emerged from this period. In 1860, the lighthouse was raised by an additional 30 feet, bringing it to its current height of 110 feet. The Fresnel lens, a revolutionary technology at the time, was installed in 1857. This increased the visibility of the light to over 19 nautical miles, dramatically improving maritime safety. Despite improvements, many mariners perished in shipwrecks off the coast. Wreckage and bodies often washed ashore beneath the lighthouse cliffs, a grim reminder of the sea's power and the fragility of life. Montauk was a critical waypoint for vessels entering the Atlantic shipping lanes. It served both commercial and military interests and was continually upgraded with the latest technology. In the late 19th century, steam-powered fog signals replaced the manual bells, and more efficient lighting systems reduced the need for constant human supervision. But with technology came new dangers. In 1895, during an experimental test of a new oil vapor lamp, a fire broke out in the lantern room. While it was quickly extinguished, it raised alarms about the safety protocols of the era. Some maintain that one of the assistants who perished later, of unrelated causes, never truly left. Montauk Point has long been one of the most perilous stretches of coastline on the eastern seaboard. Surrounded by swirling currents, jagged reefs, sudden squalls, and thick Atlantic fog, it has served as the stage for countless maritime tragedies. Though the lighthouse was constructed to protect seafarers from these very dangers, its presence could not prevent all loss of life. Over the centuries, Montauk Lighthouse has witnessed shipwrecks, mysterious disappearances, fatal accidents, and the steady toll of nature's wrath. This chapter delves deeper into those incidents, some well known, others nearly forgotten, but all deeply etched into the landscape's memory. Long before the lighthouse was built, the waters around Montauk had a reputation for treachery. Native Montaukett tribes and early European settlers spoke of ships smashed on hidden rocks or dragged under by fierce undertows. The shifting sands off the point frequently confused even seasoned captains, and weather could change with astonishing speed. By the late 1700s and early 1800s, as international trade expanded and coastal shipping routes became busier, the frequency of shipwrecks around Montauk increased. Before the lighthouse's 1796 completion, dozens of ships were lost each decade, and even after the beacon began shining, it could not always pierce through fog or overpower the chaos of a storm. The bodies of drowned sailors and passengers would often wash ashore near the lighthouse. In some cases, wreckage piled up for miles along the coastline, and residents would attempt to salvage what they could. It was not uncommon for lighthouse keepers to keep a handwritten log of fatalities, a grim register of the sea's fury. One of the most devastating maritime tragedies in Montauk's recorded history is the sinking of the Pelican, a 42-foot party fishing boat that capsized on September 1st, 1951. The vessel, which had departed from Montauk Harbour, was overloaded, carrying 64 passengers and crew, far beyond its legal limit. As the day progressed, a sudden and violent storm swept in from the Atlantic. The seas became dangerously rough, and the Pelican was caught off guard. Despite efforts to return to port, the overloaded vessel was struck by multiple waves and overturned in the reef's turbulent waters, just a few miles from the lighthouse. 45 people lost their lives that afternoon, many of them day trippers and amateur fishermen. Only 19 survived. Witnesses from the lighthouse reported seeing distant flashes and what appeared to be a large shape turning sideways in the waves. While rescue efforts were mounted quickly by the Coast Guard and local fishermen, the suddenness of the disaster left little time to save most passengers. To this day, the Pelican tragedy remains one of the worst maritime disasters in Long Island's history. A plaque near the Montauk Lighthouse honors the victims, and local residents gather each year to mark the anniversary. Many paranormal investigators have tied ghostly sightings in the area, including strange cries heard at night and ghostly silhouettes seen on stormy evenings. To the restless spirits of those who died aboard the Pelican, one local legend, possibly rooted in historical truth, tells of the drowning of a lighthouse keeper's daughter during the mid-19th century. While playing near the shoreline below the lighthouse, the child reportedly slipped on algae-covered rocks and was swept away by a rogue wave. The event devastated her family, and although her name has been lost to time, some believe she was buried on site or in the nearby Montauk Cemetery. Over the years, multiple lighthouse keepers and visitors have claimed to hear the laughter or crying of a child echoing through the tower during calm, windless nights. More haunting still are reports from hikers along the cliffside trails who say they've seen a small figure standing dangerously close to the edge of the bluff, only to vanish when called out to. While some skeptics chalk it up to imagination or mirages, others insist the presence is real and tragically persistent. In the late 1800s, a tragic accident took the life of an assistant keeper named James Beckett, who was reportedly cleaning the glass of the lantern room during a violent squall. A sudden gust of wind knocked him off balance, and he fell nearly 80 feet to the rocks below. The story is corroborated by local archives and a passing mention in a US Lighthouse Board report from 1883, which stated, "One assistant keeper perished in an unfortunate fall from the upper deck while tending to maintenance during inclement conditions." Since that time, lighthouse staff and volunteers have reported hearing footsteps on the metal stairs leading to the lantern, always ascending, never descending, and sometimes accompanied by the sound of metal tools clinking or sliding. Tour guides have had guests refuse to climb the tower after experiencing a sudden bout of dizziness or fear upon reaching the upper floors. Phenomena some believe are spiritual echoes of Beckett's final moments. During World War II, the Montauk Lighthouse was part of a heavily militarized coastal defense network. Soldiers were stationed nearby at Camp Hero. Radar towers were constructed, and the bluff was outfitted with artillery and observation bunkers. Montauk became a high-security zone, and though its lighthouse remained active, it was closed to the public. During this period, several mysterious disappearances occurred, both at sea and on land. 2 Coast Guardsmen assigned to patrol the beach vanished during a storm in 1943. Despite an extensive search, their bodies were never found. Local rumor suggests they may have slipped on the rocks or been swept away by the tide, but others believe foul play, or even supernatural forces, may have played a role. Adding to the mystery are local tales of fishermen spotting strange lights beneath the water off the coast at night during the war. While officially attributed to German U-boats, some suggest the lights were never accounted for and may be connected to the Montauk Project or unexplained phenomena. Beyond shipwrecks and drownings, the land around the lighthouse has also claimed lives. The cliffs at Montauk Point are made of soft, eroding glacial sediment. Over the years, large chunks of the bluff have collapsed into the sea without warning. In 1996, a teenager hiking near the cliff edge reportedly fell to his death when a section of the ground beneath him gave way. Park rangers have since marked restricted areas, but the terrain remains unstable and dangerous during heavy rain and wind. Local law warns hikers to keep their distance from the edge, both for safety and to avoid disturbing the spirits said to linger there. Some hikers have reported hearing whispers or screams from below the cliffs, especially during high tide or after a storm. One of the most haunting patterns noted by historians and paranormal investigators is how often tragedy seems to strike around the same areas, particularly near the bluff edge, the old fog signal building, and the spiral stairs of the lighthouse itself. There is an almost cyclical nature to the misfortunes here, as if Montauk Point holds a memory of each loss. Psychics who have visited the area claim it's a spiritual echo chamber, amplifying grief and unresolved emotion. Skeptics see coincidence and natural danger, but believers sense something deeper, something that ties the lighthouse's tragic history into a fabric that time has not fully unraveled. Today, the Montauk Historical Society and local preservationists work to honor the memories of those lost. Exhibits in the Lighthouse Museum include sections on maritime disasters, shipwrecks, and lighthouse keepers' lives. Memorial plaques, journal excerpts, and oral histories provide a somber but respectful tribute. Despite advances in technology, the sea remains dangerous, and Montauk Point, with all its beauty and history, reminds us of the delicate line between safety and disaster. Montauk's strategic location made it a natural military lookout during times of war. During World War I and II, the lighthouse became part of a larger defense system. Fort Hero and Camp Hero were established nearby, turning Montauk into a militarized zone. Observation posts were camouflaged into the cliffs, and German U-boats were said to lurk off the coast. Some speculate that the militarization of Montauk set the stage for later Cold War-era experiments, including the infamous Montauk Project, which we'll explore more deeply in a bit. The Montauk Lighthouse has long been associated with ghost stories and unexplained phenomena. Staff and guests alike have reported phantom footsteps, especially near the keeper's quarters and spiral staircase, where disembodied steps echo despite no one being present. Sudden cold spots. Even on warm summer days, visitors report sudden temperature drops, classic signs in paranormal lore. Apparitions. The figure of a man in 19th century clothing has been seen standing at the top of the tower. Some believe it's the spirit of a former keeper who fell to his death. While some accounts are whispered among locals and passed down like folklore, others have been documented by paranormal investigators and historians alike. What's unique about the Montauk Lighthouse is how its legends blend with history. The tragedies that unfolded along its cliffs and halls seem to have left behind energetic echoes, ghostly imprints of a bygone era that continue to make their presence known. Perhaps the most heartbreaking and well-known apparition associated with the Montauk Lighthouse is that of the girl in white. She is frequently described as being around 10 years old, with flowing blonde hair and a long pale dress that billows in the coastal wind. Her apparition is most often seen in the area just below the bluff, along the rocky shoreline, where tides crash violently and fog lingers unnaturally. According to legend, she was the daughter of a lighthouse keeper in the mid-19th century. Historical records do speak of a keeper named Captain Elias Torrance, who served from 1858 to 1873. Torrance's family lived with him in the keeper's quarters, and one of his daughters is said to have drowned after slipping on the rocks during low tide. While no official record confirms the tragedy, local oral tradition keeps her memory alive. Visitors often report seeing her walking slowly near the base of the tower or wandering the cliffs with a lost, searching expression. Some claim that she will turn her head slowly if addressed, and others insist that she vanishes if approached. Her presence is frequently accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature and the faint scent of salt water and lilacs, unusual in a place dominated by brine and seaweed. Several staff members at the Lighthouse Museum have refused to stay late after witnessing this girl's form move across the closed exhibit rooms, only to disappear before reaching a wall. Another recurring apparition is known among paranormal circles as the Lost Sailor. He is typically seen standing still at the edge of the bluff, gazing out toward the Atlantic as though awaiting a ship that will never return. His clothes appear to be those of a 19th century mariner, weathered oilskins and a wool cap, although some describe him wearing a sailor's pea coat, soaked as if he had just come from the sea. The legend varies in detail. One account speaks of a British sailor from a ship that ran aground in the early 1800s, with the entire crew lost except for him. Stricken with survivor's guilt, he stayed at Montauk as a labourer, eventually dying in obscurity. Another version claims the sailor was aboard a Montauk-based fishing vessel that was swallowed in a storm, his spirit returning periodically to the only beacon that had once offered him hope. Sightings of the lost sailor often occur during stormy weather or heavy fog. Witnesses describe a figure that seems solid from a distance, but dissolves like mist when approached. On one particularly foggy morning in 1999, a group of photographers swore they captured the silhouette of a man on the bluff. When they approached, the figure was gone, but their photographs showed a vague outline where no person should have been. Another story passed among staff and paranormal enthusiasts is that of a lighthouse assistant who died in a fall from the lantern gallery in the mid-19th centuries. While his name is debated, some say Thomas Brennan, others Isaiah Clarke. The death appears to have some historical basis. A journal entry from 1863 in the New York Lighthouse Board records mentions the replacement of an assistant at Montauk following an unfortunate accident. Eyewitnesses have described hearing loud footfalls climbing the metal spiral staircase at night, always ascending, never descending. Staff who've worked late have reported the sound of tools dropping or boots shuffling above them, despite the tower being locked. One particularly chilling account came from a Coast Guard member stationed there in the 1980s, who heard rhythmic banging coming from the gallery above during a storm. When he went to investigate, he found the room empty but wet, despite the windows being shut tight. Later that week, he resigned and reportedly never spoke of the incident again. Even though Montauk Lighthouse now uses a modern electric beacon, there are recurring reports of an old flame glowing in the lens room. Specifically, on November 5th, the anniversary of the lighthouse's first illumination in 1796, visitors claim to see an amber-coloured flicker where there should be only the steady electric beam. The light appears to sway as if blown by wind, mimicking the old whale oil flame that would have been manually tended centuries ago. One account tells of a park ranger who climbed the tower during a maintenance check on the evening of November 5th, 2005. He found the room filled with a strange, faintly oily smell, and the main beacon turned off due to a power issue. Yet a golden flicker danced within the Fresnel lens, casting shadows on the walls. As he approached, it vanished, and the lights came back on moments later. The belief among some spiritualists is that the lighthouse itself retains memories of significant moments in its history, and the first lighting was so momentous that its echo remains burned into the fabric of the building. One of the more recent phenomena reported at Montauk Point is what some refer to as the Montauk shadows. Unlike specific apparitions, these are fleeting human-shaped silhouettes that dart along walls or move across the grass at dusk, seen in the periphery, only to vanish when one turns to face them. Tour guides have described groups of tourists all turning their heads at once, responding to something just there along the side of the keeper's house. Nighttime ghost tours, sanctioned unofficially by local groups, sometimes use infrared cameras, and several photos have captured dark figures in windows or doorways where no one was present. Some believe these shadows are manifestations of the many lives that passed through Montauk over the centuries. Sailors, soldiers, workers, and travelers, leaving only a fragmented echo behind. No chapter on the paranormal at Montauk would be complete without mentioning the Montauk Project, a conspiracy theory alleging that Camp Hero, just down the road from the lighthouse, was home to government experiments involving time travel, mind control, and alien contact during the Cold War. Some proponents believe that the psychic energy produced during these experiments somehow disturbed the spiritual balance of the area, waking up dormant energies in and around the lighthouse. Paranormal investigators have noted a spike in sightings and unexplained activity during the 1980s, the same time period when the Montauk Project was supposedly active. The blending of conspiracy and haunting gives Montauk Lighthouse a uniquely modern layer of folklore, making it one of the most investigated paranormal sites in the northeastern United States. What ties these ghost stories together is the overwhelming sense of presence at Montauk Point. Many visitors, even those skeptical of the supernatural, report an inexplicable feeling of being watched, especially near dusk or in heavy fog. While skeptics point to the eerie power of the landscape itself, believers are quick to note how often people independently describe similar figures, sounds, and sensations. Whether one accepts these tales as literal truth or interprets them as metaphorical echoes of history, one fact remains. Montauk Lighthouse is a place where the veil feels unusually thin, where the past is never quite past, and the light still shines into realms both seen and unseen. By the mid-20th century, automation and neglect threatened Montauk Lighthouse. The Coast Guard automated the light in 1987, eliminating the need for keepers. For a time, the lighthouse faced the possibility of demolition due to severe erosion. Thanks to the Montauk Historical Society, efforts were made to stabilize the bluff and restore the structure. Today, it stands as a museum and active aid to navigation. It was designated a National Historic Landmark in 2012. But even as it thrives as a tourist destination, many visitors report eerie sensations, and some claim that history hasn't let go of Montauk Point. Today, Montauk Lighthouse is one of Long Island's top tourist destinations, drawing thousands of visitors annually. The museum showcases artifacts from the Revolutionary period to the modern Coast Guard era. Educational programs, tours, and exhibits help preserve the stories of those who lived and died at Montauk Point. Visitors to Montauk can explore the museum, climb to the lantern room, and walk the surrounding trails. On clear days, the panoramic view of the Atlantic is breathtaking, but some say the best time to visit is near dusk, when shadows lengthen and the wind begins to whisper through the rocks. Non-profits like the Montauk Historical Society continue to preserve the site and accept donations. Their work ensures that this historic and haunted place remains accessible for generations.